is an employer master award, but that's Spanish. That's some of those things they've taken from.
That's crazy.
Spain.
So have they taken more of Spanish? I guess
There's a lot of
we
similarities.
need to just record.
And with that, welcome to the Twaddling Along podcast, the show where three grown men meander through whatever thought first pops in their head in defiance of good taste and common sense. I'm your host, Dan McBride, here with my two brothers and co-host Jake.
Maayon Gabi.
And Josh.
Howdy.
Twaddling Along, just kind of a brief synopsis of what we do. It encompasses the three of us going through topics of our choosing, learning, riffing on each other, and in always just allowing our suspected ADD to take a violent hold of ourselves. To try to bring some semblance of normalcy, though, we try to keep our discussion semi-focused on topics within three areas: history, paranormal, and the human condition. Now, we did history last week with King Tut. This week, we're diving right into the spooky. And when I mean spooky, because it is terrifying.
Yeah, I was listening to a video on the way over here, and
It is not good.
I had to turn my car lights on because I was like, I cast everything out
And
here.
with that, the narrator and the leader of this week's topic discussion, Jake, what'd you bring to the table for us, Jake?
So today we're going to talk about the Philippines. Now, a few interesting facts about the Philippines. The Philippines was discovered by Ferdinand Magellan. Now, we know that that's actually not right. There was a ton of people in Asia that discovered it first. But Ferdinand Magellan claimed the island in the name of Spain, and he named it after King Philip II of Spain, which is why it's called the Philippines.
Oh, that makes sense.
In the Philippines, there are 7,641 islands. Of those islands, only, I guess you could say about 2,000 are actually named. There's like 5,000 plus that are not. They're just kind of there and present.
Oh my gosh.
So there is 170 dialects. I speak two.
Which ones do you speak?
I speak Hiligaynon and Cebuano.
Oh.
So where there was many, and sometimes you would just cross over into a nearby town and someone would be speaking a different language. So with that, I did live there for 2 years on a religious mission, so it holds a special place in my heart. But one thing I found very quick upon getting there is the Filipinos have very interesting superstitions and folklore.
Interesting is a one way to describe it. I would say straight up like nightmarish. Like to a point where, as I was preparing for this thing, it literally did cause like nightmares. So those poor Filipino people, they're just constantly in a state of like dread and panic, it seems.
They are, but they're so nice.
I just have to point out, I said that we were talking about something scary and Jake just broke right into, the Philippines. We're not saying that the Philippines are scary. We love our Filipino listeners. But the folklore itself, holy cow.
I think I was only there for maybe 2 or 3 days before someone brought up the idea of like an aswang or
Really?
some of the other stuff.
Really?
Yeah, they were pretty quick. And we'll get into a majority of these, but I mean there was many times where people would tell me stories and they would talk about instances of coming across certain things, and so we'll kind of dive into some of those and talk about them. Dan and Josh decided to dive really deep and get spooked. I find it humorous just because I was over there, and the majority of the time that people spoke about these, I was in an interesting position where I could just chuckle. But
See, and I think the other thing is Dan and I have both lived out of the area we're broadcasting from, and Danny lived in a sketchy area where there wasn't, what would you say, mystery, paranoia, or
Nope.
paranormal. It was live action,
Sure.
And where I lived, everyone is just apologetic and, like not really paranormal anything. You just worry about, a moose or a bear coming down in the front of your lawn.
It is interesting, and I do want to talk about it, but it does seem like sometimes the more rural you go, the more maybe rural living that you are, all of a sudden these folklores kind of start popping up, and I've often kind of wondered why that's the case, why folklores don't kind of stick around in cities, because it kind of seems like they're lost in cities. They just kind of disappear. but not in the Philippines.
No, they are very present, and everyone loves them.
Now, Jake, where were you exactly in the Philippines, just for reference?
So I was in the very middle, kind of in the Philippines, in the Visayan Islands, specifically on Negros Occidental and Oriental. So that's where I spent there. And there's actually, we'll kind of get into some folklore of things that are actually kind of specific to that area. One of them was actually in close by an area that I got to go visit a few times. So we'll talk more about that.
Ooh, let's jump into the spooky. Let's get it going.
Spooky it is.
Spooky.
All right, let's start off with the umbrella, which is an aswang.
Ugh.
Aswang.
So, an aswang. I was over there, and very quickly I heard about it. It was brought up. People told me there were very many iterations of an aswang, what it was doing, how it terrified them, that I was going to come across it, that it was going to eat me, one of those things. So, in simple men's terms, it's a shapeshifter. Now, I used to ask them continuously, like, what are they? And they would just say, it's an aswang. It's its own thing. It's a monster.
Yeah, because it's not like translated from something. It's not like it doesn't come from some kind of word or anything like.
Yeah, not that I saw specifically. I mean, it maybe does somewhere, but some examples of things outside the Philippines that might be considered an aswang would be like a vampire, a witch, a werewolf.
Gotcha. So it's a very broad statement for a lot of mythical creatures, we would say.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, they have quite a number, and they're kind of notorious for hanging out, plain as human being in the middle of the day. They're just going about their business, and then at nighttime they show their true colors, and that's usually when some fun stuff goes down.
Oh my goodness!
So they actually have I can't remember the city, but they actually have someone. And they actually have multiple of these, but I remember that they used to talk about that they had people that were like, they would tell you, like, I'm an aswang, and they looked straight up possessed. Like, they were just...
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they just
So this isn't like something like, you hear the word vampire, and two things either come to mind. Either we're talking like Dracula, or we're talking like, the goth kids. You know what I'm talking about? Like the ones in high school that would be like, I'm gonna drink some blood, and you're like, no, you're not. You're gonna have like cranberry juice because your tummy hurts.
Yep.
But like these guys, when you say like straight possessed, you're saying like they seemed, to use a term, evil, kind of like.
They did, or they just seemed to be completely out of it. I mean, there's like they would sit in a chair with their head rolled back and their eyes back, and it was
my gosh,
just things like that. So,
and they weren't under like the influence of, any substance or anything, or is it just?
There was a good chance they probably were, but I don't know what substance it would have been.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Oh,
but they would tell it. There were people who would talk about it. They were like, yeah, there's one over in that city you just have to be careful about.
Yeah, that's something that I learned as I was studying about this, is that a lot of the mythical creatures and the paranormal in the Philippines, humans are the mythical creatures. They're not just like, there's a beast out there. It's like you can become that beast that's out there. And with aswang, it sounded like that's what it was. People are the aswangs.
Yeah, I kind of think of it as in the same way that we view like medieval witches.
Yeah.
It's the idea that the little old lady down the street could be getting into something, and it's giving her power, we'll say, to do some not great things, be it transforming, like Jake said, into dogs, werewolves, vampires. I know that there was one. I'm gonna look it up real quick, but it was like the viscera sucker.
Oh yeah.
Did you guys read that?
Yeah, the one that sucks out your innards.
Yeah, like literally goes after your liver. Like, oh. So did you ever meet an aswang, someone who claimed to be an aswang?
No, I luckily never came across someone that had that. So I had plenty of people that were convinced that they had. And because of that, they were very, very cautious at nighttime. If we were walking together in a sugarcane field or in a foresty area, they usually stuck pretty close to me because I guess they thought the American was going to protect them. But I think honestly, they probably thought, do you know what? I think the American is more scrumptious than I am. So let's push the American there.
So just a question before, you mentioned that you kind of heard about this stuff 2-3 days in, does everyone over there kind of believe in these, mythical creatures or paranormal stuff that's going on?
It depended. A lot of the older generation did.
Gotcha.
That I came across. They would talk about it. They would talk about experiences. There were a few of the younger generation that would specify that, I've seen something up in a tree.
Mhm.
I've seen something flying in the air that didn't look like anything I've seen
Mm.
before.
Mm.
So they would. I think that a lot of people tended to have maybe some superstitions, but I
Gotcha.
don't know how many people like full on believe like, yeah, there's something out there.
Gotcha.
Well,
Okay.
I know that they were talking that a lot of the Aswang kind of activity kind of came around like Holy Weeks in the Catholic Church, and so it's always been kind of interesting to me because the Aswang, at least from what my reading, like it predates Christianity, like coming to the Philippines by hundreds of years. I mean, some of the very first priests that were sent over to the Philippines in the 1600s were literally writing down like, oh no, we're hearing these stories about Aswangs of coming. And one priest had a quote saying, we know these things are real, for one of the recorders in the city had his skin taken by an Aswang.
Oh yeah, I read about that.
Which-
and now the city's like home for.
Yeah, which freaks me out that like you have someone coming in from the outside and, be it paranormal or be it just a crazy person taking someone's skin. There was enough belief that someone from the outside was saying, oh no, this is real. This is 100% real. Ugh.
Yeah, well, what they had that belief, and then in some writings I found it after the Christian influence came in and you had Catholicism and some stuff come in, they utilized that to teach about good and evil and and possession and things like that.
I just going along with that, I found there's one, I can't remember the name of one of the mythical creatures, that it was specifically an unbaptized child that died, and that was what created the creatures. It was the soul that was a wandering soul.
That's a pretty common thing in like Catholic. I know a lot of Central and South American cultures have something very similar. The unbaptized child, or the creature that was ripped from the womb, or something that came back and kind of.
Did you guys actually look into the unborn child that would be in the forest and would eat people?
No.
I
What?
A little bit.
Wait, what?
I didn't put it down on our list of monsters we were going to talk about, but I forgot the name of it.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, if you want to be a little bit perturbed, go study that.
Ugh.
I would have to look.
I'm already freaked out enough because of the thing that freaks me out probably about this entire kind of conversation. And I love paranormal. I like getting myself scared, but it's when I start to see similarities with cultures that should, for all intents and purposes, have had no contact until pretty much the modern day. So like you're looking at like these vampire legends, these legends of these creatures that would come out and take your blood, eat your liver, do these horrible things, and then like you take something from the Philippines and you compare it to something like Mongolia, which they shouldn't have had contact. There should have been nothing.
No, nothing.
And yet the stories are so similar, like to a point where it's like, oh, okay, like either there's some cross-culture things we don't understand, or maybe there's something out there that maybe there either at one time it really was a thing, or I don't know.
Yeah,
because the idea of a vampire or a blood-sucking undead human is almost universal.
Yeah,
like literally African countries have their version of it, and it's not just like the vampire. It's this creature that can change its skin, this creature that takes on animalistic kind of something, this creature that sucks blood, this creature that is somehow, connected with the dark deities of the culture. It's weird. It is really, really weird.
Yeah, no, they're definitely. It's interesting when one of the definitions that I came across, I think, defines it really well. But as I read, it was like, wow, that really does apply to a majority of shapeshifters in many cultures. It's an individual who has lost control of their spiritual self.
Yikes!
Yeah, which
this
is
is
one of
where I
those-
bow out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you think about, some of even the Native American traditions. I mean, you look at
skinwalkers.
yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
it's they give
Which
up
we will
something.
get into for sure.
Oh, yeah, that will
we're
be
gonna
one
have to get
episode.
into that one, but
Probably not this time around, but
No,
I'm sure we'll
no,
get to it
no,
eventually.
We'll get to it
Since we, it's a little closer to home, then
a little too close to home in some cases.
I was
So
gonna
what?
say.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Aswang, there's like isn't that where the tik comes from?
Yeah.
So tell us about the tik.
The tik, for what was explained to me, now I think there's probably a few different versions, but the one that was explained to me is it was a creature that could kind of fly. It had a very long tongue, and what it would do is it would prey on pregnant women and the unborn child. So you would have what they told me, and it was kind of funny because they were watching a show about it one of the times I had come to a house, and they decided just to tell me all about it. If you hear it, that's good, because that means it's far away. When you hear it fainter and fainter, until it means it's getting closer.
Oh my god!
So-
And see, and that right there, that's not an uncommon motif. The idea that if you hear it, you're fine, but if it gets quieter, it's getting closer. That's all. Like Central America has it all over. Norway's got things in it. Oh,
So what? So they hunted pregnant women. Does that mean that they were like seeking out to eat the fetus that's inside the pregnant lady?
That was kind of the big thing. Yeah, they would use their tongues to
Oh my
eat
gosh.
eat the fetus.
And I
So-
mean, there's definitely some cultural aspects of this. I mean, if you look at it from a psychological perspective and kind of take the paranormal out of it, you could say, oh, they're trying to explain something like
miscarriage.
yeah. Trying to explain something that medically is happening to these women where they're losing their children.
Literally. So,
But like, then why come up with this flying demon creature? You know what I'm talking about?
Makes
Like
a
it's
horrible noise.
yeah, that makes this terrible tick noise that's coming at you.
well, here's what's funny is they come up with these things, but the countermeasures to prevent these things from coming are just as, in my opinion, kind of wacko. I mean, to prevent miscarriages with this aswang, one method is for the husband of a childbearing wife to remain under the house naked while furiously waving a sword. Can you imagine that? They're underneath this house waving a sword butt naked while the wife is in labor just to prevent this creature from coming and,
Honey,
Yeah.
can you hold my hand? I'm going through a contraction. Sorry, dear. I'm a little busy.
I'm a little busy right now.
I need to keep away the tick. And how are you doing that? Well, I'm naked.
Underneath the house.
With a sword.
Well,
Say mine was you hung out next to the opening in your roof, and if the tongue came down, because normally they would land on the roof,
Oh, yeah.
and the tongue would come down, and if you cut it, that would normally pretty much make the end for the aswang, because that's their source of
Oh, my gosh.
feeding
oh,
and
that's
stuff.
crazy.
And just for our viewers, like, Jake, what would you describe their houses looking like? Because we're first world, we have gable roofs and everything, but what did their houses look like?
So depending on the area,
Mhm.
they have some really up to date areas. I mean, that seem to have normal housing,
Modernity,
like we would have.
yeah.
Yeah. But a lot of the ones that came across, I mean, they're made of bamboo. If you have a cement house, you are rich.
Oh, really?
You're doing really well for yourself. Where a lot of the other ones, it was mostly bamboo slats that they would put together, and then you would normally have banana leaves or other type of leaves as roofing and things like that.
Oh, gosh.
So made for some good times.
Oh.
Yeah.
Go up to someone's house and ask if anyone's home, and they would yell out "No," and then you'd see them run. You're like, "Okay,
No, I'm gone. Sorry.
Stay away from me.
So,
Oh
Oh my goodness. All right, let's go to another one. Let's leave the aswang behind just for a minute. We'll probably end up coming back to it, but what are some other
Ooh,
freaky folklore stuff?
the one that I want to talk about, at least get some more information, because to be honest, I couldn't find a ton, but I know that it is across many cultures, but very prevalent in the Philippines, is the white lady.
Oh, see, blah.
So I actually, the first area I lived in, the house I was told had a white lady in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had a lot of people that expressed concern about me living in that house.
So let's talk about what a white lady actually is.
So, it, from all intents and purposes, and again, this is from Jake, who heard it from people, and I would get different stories everywhere I went. It was a woman that was dressed in white, complete white. She usually had dark hair, and that hair would cover her face.
Oh my gosh.
And it usually, I mean, a lot of times she was weeping, crying, something was wrong. And then if you turned away from her and turned back, you would see a heavily scarred face as it was coming to kill you type of thing. So.
What's that scary movie that has that where she comes out of the...
La Llorona.
Oh, yeah.
See, and that's what I'm talking about. So, I mean, like... And this is another one. This one freaks me out probably the most because it's not just happening in like third world countries or countries that have deep folklore. You know, we don't call it the white lady, but we have white lady sightings all the time. We just call them hitchhiking ghosts.
Yeah.
You know, the women, the woman in the white that's, you know, disheveled, that's hanging out on the side of the road that seems to be hitchhiking. I mean, there are so many stories of that all throughout, and they're always weeping. There's always something going on, and you can trace these stories of the white ladies, the white women, like La Lloronas back literally millennium, all the way back to the earliest one that I heard mentioned is like the Assyrians. So we're talking like 2000 BC.
Beginning of civilization.
They had some kind of story. Now you could make the argument, okay, so that story's been passed down, but why does it continue? Why is it so prevalent? Why do we have the white lady of the Philippines, this disheveled, terrible thing that's going to come and kill you if you turn your back? And why do we have the banshee of Ireland and England? Mm-hmm. They are like quite literally a very similar entity, and that's terrifying to me. Ugh.
I never found her. I was told that it would happen.
She was hiding,
and trust me, I was up plenty of times in the middle of the night having to go to the bathroom. So,
what
was more terrifying is opening the toilet and seeing a bunch of cockroaches climb out of the toilet and go, "Oh, you know what? Maybe I'm not feeling up for that."
That's called real life horror.
Yep.
So I did a little bit more research into the white lady.
Yeah.
Because this is one that kind of captured me just because there are so many similarities. Prior to the Catholic arrival, the white lady was considered to be a woman who was banished by either the tribe or group, was sent off into the woods, and made a deal with dark deities to birth children. And if the child was born, the child would be taken from the mother, and she would wail. And she would wail for the loss of her child. Now, that kind of changed post-Catholicism into a woman who would kill her own children, either for some kind of power, which is freaky, or just out of grief, what we would consider, either post-traumatic stress disorder or postpartum depression or something like that, and whose grief would, after killing her child, overcome her to a point where she would kill herself, and then God would punish her suicide by making her this creature of the night. It's
say a lot of the ones I heard was more along the lines of losing a child and dying afterwards because of that. Like they just couldn't take it. But then usually I'd get stuff where it's like a white lady became the red lady, and I'm like, what does that mean? Is she going to become a purple lady? What's going on? Do they go through the different colors?
Hey, to be honest, I think a purple lady would be much scarier than a white lady.
Oh,
I'd be like, oh yeah, it's just a girl in a white dress, but a purple lady coming at you?
Grimace.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Blah, 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 blah. Oh my gosh. I'm never going to eat there again.
She ate the bubble gum, didn't she?
That was a good Willy Wonka throw. That was good, Jake.
Hey, thank you.
Very impressive.
It was just a few decades. That's fine. I think most people hopefully remember it.
What's his name? Gene Wilder. He'd be very proud of you.
He would be. Aw, Gene. It's almost Halloween, which means it's almost time for Young Frankenstein. Speaking of spooky stuff.
Nice.
One of my favorite movies of all time.
It's a good movie.
It is a great movie. It's a fantastic movie that everybody needs to watch.
It's one where you start watching it and then you forget you have kids at home. And you're like, I probably shouldn't watch this.
Close your eyes.
I remember watching it growing up because, Danny, you had it.
Oh, yeah.
And then I showed my wife after we got married. She had never seen it before. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is a little bit more raunchy than I remember.
It's definitely a Mel Brooks movie, that's for sure. But, it's a classic.
It is a good one. I like it.
It's my Halloween favorite coming up. So going back to the White Lady, what are your guys' thoughts on these kind of stories that are cross cultural? Where do you think they come from? Do you think that it's something that's just kind of culturally in everybody's culture, or do you think it's something that that could be something paranormal?
I like to think of it as we as humans, it's a little bit more of a small world than we tend to give ourselves credit for. And because of that, I mean, you look at even architecture,
sure,
where it's like,
like
I don't know if they had trading in those areas, and yet we have similar architecture. Why is that? Well, because for some reason that seemed to be the best way to build a structure, to be able to, especially to a deity or something. And I think it's something similar with, I think we have a lot more common fears than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like a lot of us are scared of very similar things. I mean, who wouldn't be scared of a woman, even if she's not dressed in white, a woman that you can't see her face, but she's weeping and moaning in the dark.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have the two kind of thought processes that it's kind of a cognitive dissonance of mine of, that very thing where the world is small and culture is shared. Mm-hmm. And so culture is shared enough that there's got to be similarity in the fears and in like the folklore and everything like that. But then I just keep going back to this. How can an isolated island free from a lot of interference? I mean, there was a little bit, but not a whole ton. How could they have something that's the same as literally like our ancestors up in like the Scottish and Irish moors? It's and not just like, oh, they share one characteristic that's the same or another characteristic, but quite literally like the whole story almost is the exact same.
Yeah, the thing about me is I like history a ton, and what they say is usually with mythology or other things like that, there's always a hidden truth where it was based upon. So if you look at that, I mean, there has to be something where they were able to base upon, or we just have very similar imaginations, or you know,
maybe if everything is evolutionarily like driven, then I can't help but wonder if maybe this white lady, this Aswang, has to do with something that happened deep in like our ancestral past that made us so we had to fear something like this. Could have been a disease that affected mostly the females. It could have been, the loss of child, the high infant mortality and postpartum depression trying to be described, or it could just be straight up something that we don't know, something out there that's a little bit more spiritual, a little bit more, I don't know, paranormal and scary.
Aliens.
And it could
going
be
back to aliens. Yeah.
Yes, it could.
And this is what I want to bring up. The thing, especially with the White Lady, and you mentioned this a little bit earlier, a lot of these mythical creatures and folklore existed before the quote-unquote white man
the Spanish
invaded the islands. And so, but I have a curious notion. I mean, the Filipinos are a different race than, the Europeans. And so it would probably be scary seeing a European for the first time coming out, guns ablazing, swords,
sure.
on a horse, whatever. And so it could be a fear just like, oh my gosh, I've seen this happen. Like come out of,
Yeah.
Well, good old Ferdinand learned his lesson real quick. Take
Wasn't
a
he
poisoned
killed?
arrow in the Philippines.
Yeah, I was going to say.
It was in the Philippines, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was a poisoned arrow. So, yeah. See, he discovered it wasn't quite the place we want to.
All right. Well, let's move on. What's our next spooky Filipino folklore?
We could go a lot of different areas here.
I wanna touch on the one that was the funny one that you had when you were over there. You told us when you got back from the Philippines.
Oh, the duende?
The duende.
Which really, I mean,
that is taken from Spain directly.
Is it? There is things, there are similarities, and definitely, I mean, it's kind of fun because you could see this in a lot of cultures. But it's a little person, a little dwarf that is living in a tree, a rock, and in a hill, something like that. This was a very believed folklore in a lot of the areas I went to. People believed very strongly that there were certain items that you just did not touch, certain places you didn't go. My absolute favorite was in my first area, Phillipines. There was a tree that was hanging out in the middle of like these ruins of a warehouse. Like just this big warehouse. Like what they did is they used to, they still do, but they would make rum over there.
Gotcha.
Which, by the way, is burning sugar. It smells disgusting. And so they had these warehouses, and there's a lot of ruined warehouses. Well, in the middle of one, there was a tree, and I was walking past it, and a person came up out of the blue and said, "Hey, Elder, I know you're not from here. Don't go pee on the tree." And I'm like, it's like in the middle of like an open field with people. I'm like, okay, I'm not.
That has not crossed my mind.
Next time I came back, same thing. Another person came up out of the blue. "Hey, out there, don't pee on the tree." Okay, thank you. This was a common occurrence. Every time I passed by the tree, someone new would come up and just warn me. And I'm like, is it a common theme that like you guys are worried about like me going and peeing on the tree, or
a bunch of white guys just peeing
yeah,
on trees?
they want to go do it.
Oh
but inside of this tree was supposedly a dwarf, a duende. And what I came to find out is if you peed on it, he would get very upset.
Yes.
And he would make certain male objects on your body grow exponentially, so they were very uncomfortable for the rest of your life.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! I wonder. See, in that kind of story, I'm like, okay, how did that happen?
Oh,
was the tree like poison ivy or poison oak or something, and it just things happen? I don't know. Well, that makes me laugh.
So duende themselves, the word at least comes from a Spanish, kind of a hobgoblin, goblin-like creature that's dwarfen. I mean, in Europe has all sorts of fairies and elves and goblins and ghouls and the little kind of short people all over the place. I mean, shoot, even like if you go back to the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the original story of the Seven Dwarfs was they weren't little men, they were little creatures that were just kind of living in the forest that Snow White ran into. And so
I didn't know
like it's not uncommon to hear these stories of these little mischievous creatures that would enlarge your testicles as you peed on trees.
Well, what's funny is they would tell me often, they're like, there's good ones and bad ones, and I'm like, okay. And so they said, you just be aware that there's certain places that you don't pee, you don't touch, you don't step on, you don't go poke, you don't do anything. And I'd always say, well, how do you know? And they said, oh, trust me, you'll know. And I'm like, oh, thank you. And that's kind of where they would leave it. But over there, they have different colored ones. And depending on the color is how you would know whether it's, a good one or a bad one.
Racist windies.
Yeah, they would.
Oh my gosh.
They had, white ones, they had black ones, they had red ones, they had these different ones that just depending on what you were doing there's green ones. Green ones love to play with the children. And so they bring up that. And it was just.
Here, children, go play with that little guy over
The most evil was the red ones. So you had to be careful with them, which was kind of interesting. But I mean, I met people that honestly felt that they had seen them, and a lot of the time, me being in the position I was, I would always be like, "Really? Are you sure you really saw one?"
A little bit more skeptical.
But some people, it was a very tender moment with a family member. They saw them, they interacted with them, and it was very special. And some of these people, I was like, "I know you have a good mind. I mean, you're not going crazy.
You're not insane,
so it was always really interesting. That was like, oh yeah, for these people, they were real. They're there.
That's interesting.
Be careful.
Oh my goodness.
So let's go with this for a second. Can you imagine something into existence? And what I mean by that is, can you have a shared delusion where you could be with a group of people and everybody see little green men running around playing with the children?
I'll bring this experience up, and this didn't happen to me, but I've heard about it. Of someone who would pull off on the road in Yellowstone, probably had to go potty or something on the side of the road, but would start pointing, and everyone would start pulling over and quote unquote see the same thing, even though nothing was there, and would start pointing, taking pictures, and then, cause traffic jams because one person pointed when nothing was even there. So I definitely believe that there's a possibility that someone could, oh my gosh, this appeared in my house one night.
You
I have
were
a
there.
scar,
Yeah.
showing, whatever. And that can be taken and spread like wildfire amongst the masses.
My inner psychology major comes out, and it's just the brain is such a amazing instrument that it can do amazing things, and one of those things is conjure up images, conjure up things. I mean, and when you get a bunch of people together, that peer pressure becomes a big thing. That mob mentality becomes something. And I'm pretty sure, in those instances, it wouldn't be that hard, especially if you want to be part of the group, to say, oh, wait, I see it. And then when you look back on that memory, you go, oh, no, I see it. I saw it. It was there.
Yeah.
It was.
What is that phenomenon called where you remember something that has a certain feature, but in reality, it never existed? I can't remember what that...
Life is that.
That's true.
I remember me being skinny at one time. And if you look at all my childhood photos, there's not one that shows that reality. No, I know what you're talking about though. It's like a memory delusion, kind of where your memory is incomplete, and so it fills in kind of the pieces, and sometimes it fills in the pieces with the correct or the incorrect kind of information. Like you'll remember someone vividly wearing like a different colored shirt, even though there's pictures of them in that other shirt. It's the same delusion, and I shouldn't call it a delusion, but the same memory trick is what they think causes like the Mandela effect.
That's what I'm talking about. Mandela effect.
Yeah.
Yes.
The idea that like that you remember something. I remember the Bernstein Bears being spelled B-E instead of B-A. And so because
they are spelled with an A?
Yeah. Bernstein.
What
S-T-A-I-N.
My childhood's ruined.
Hey, go a little nerdy. Did Vader say, "No, Luke, I am your father," or did he say, "Do, I am your father"?
What?
Well, there's no Luke, right? I think that's the real one. Oh, see, I don't even know.
See, a lot of people, whenever they quote it, what do they say?
Luke, I am your father.
Where he never said that.
Oh my God.
So the mind is a crazy thing. We could believe in little green men playing with children. We could believe in that Darth Vader is quoting.
And you think of imaginations of children. I could just imagine it now as a parent. Your kids come back from playing out in the woods and whatnot, and they're like, oh yeah, we were playing with, this
little
green
creature.
Yeah. And of course, as a parent, you're like, oh, but then 3-4 of them come back
to the Philippines.
Yeah. They're like, oh my gosh, there's something out there.
Then they usually go running to the nearest white man. Don't go pee on that tree.
All right, what's our next one, Jake?
Oh, let's see here. I know Josh wanted to hit on this one because he was terribly excited and he said he wasn't scared at all. Tikbalang.
Oh man, this would freak me out.
The Tikbalang.
So Tikbalang is a human with a horse head, and by that I mean it's just it has the head of a horse. Some, depending on who you talk to, either has hands or paws.
Yeah.
For the ones, but then the rest of the body is human. So
the first time I heard about this, I laughed almost. I was like, "Oh, it's BoJack Horseman."
Yep, that's what I think.
But then, I started looking at like Filipino artist renditions of what they're supposed to look like, and it's freaky. Like it is like straight up like horror-inducing, nightmare-inducing. Like it's not really just like a true horse head. It's like this grotesque, awful, elongated face, and ugh.
Yeah, and what's interesting about this one is it's not so much a monster as it's a deity in a way. It's a forest deity. So what it is that it hangs out in the forest and it loves to intimidate, it loves to frighten, it loves to play tricks. It really loves to play tricks. It will love to keep you lost. And especially what it will do is it will get you lost. That way it can keep you trapped forever.
Sure.
Yeah, that's what I read. Is that's how they kill you? Is they'll get you trapped, and then I'll lead you out because I know the forest, and then continue to make sure you're lost until you die of exhaustion, leading you to these random places.
Now, we talked earlier about the Tik-Tik and how the husband would hang out naked in order to, stop the Tik-Tik from coming. The way to stop the Tikbalang from continuing to cause you to be lost is you take off your shirt, turn it inside out, and put it back on.
Right.
Man, I would never have a problem. Sorry, wife. I do wear my shirts inside out all the
terrible.
time.
Yeah, well, I guess when you do that, immediately everything becomes clear, and you're like, "Hey, I know my way home now."
I'm gonna try that one time. I'm
In a confused
lost somewhere.
You're in the middle of the store. I can't find my wife. Oh wait,
Takes your shirt off, put it back on. Oh, there she is.
she's
can
going
only
to be
imagine.
like, "I was here the whole time."
Oh my goodness.
Isn't it interesting that trickster gods are a thing?
Yeah, you have Loki in Norse mythology and Greek mythology. There's several.
I mean, even in Christianity, some early Christian writings, that's how they portrayed Lucifer. I mean, you look at Lot and the story of Lot, and it's a kind of a trickster god kind of feeling. Like it's this idea that I'm here to deceive you, but that's all I can do. But the damage I can do by deceiving you, just like our horse-headed friend over here, can kill you.
Yeah.
But that's another thing it's really common, really common. This motif of a trickster god. This one just happens to have a horse head.
It does.
This one's just BoJack Horseman.
Yep.
Poor depressed BoJack.
Well, what's fun about it is that this was pre-Christian, Christianity, and it was also pre-Spanish. Now, they didn't have horses in the Philippines.
Oh, see, that's weird.
So the interesting thing is here they have this tradition, and there's beliefs that it could have come from the Hindus that traded with the Malaysians, and the Malaysians have brought up the tradition or the belief to the Philippines, and that's where it kind of hung out.
Passed down culturally.
But it's kind of interesting that they had this tikbalang with a horse head, and they probably had no idea what a horse head was.
Yeah, how would they describe that? And then all of a sudden a horse shows up.
That's what I
in
was
Spanish,
just thinking.
Of like, oh my gosh, that's what it is right there,
Yeah, the first time that they saw a horse, you would think that there would be like widespread panic. Like straight up, like almost, like, oh my gosh, here is our god that's coming off the boat with these white people.
Yeah, I mean,
Ugh.
you look at the Incans and the Mayans and everything with their gods and deities. It was the same thing with the Spanish. When they arrived, it was, hey, our white god is returned. Let's worship him. And then the Spanish wiped him out. It could have been very similar of, oh my gosh, this Tikbalang is coming and he's going to protect us. He's this god. Let's not get tricked. It blows my
Let's
mind.
shoot a poison arrow at him.
Yep, let's hit the one off the back. He was so close.
Yeah.
He was so close to coming home. He was almost there.
I was going to say he was gone for more than a year at that
Yeah,
point, right?
he
He was doing his circumnavigation of the globe.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, a majority of his crew died. So by the time the rest of the crew got away from there,
Mhm.
and they were able to come around and come up, I mean, like, they were pretty sparse.
Oh my god.
Well, isn't it that Cook was a Cook that was afterward that like just stayed away from the Philippines because of that? There was one of the
Probably.
explorers, and I wish I could remember who it was. I was reading about that because of the problems that they had in the Philippines, they were just like, we're just gonna let them be. We're gonna leave them alone.
It was all those Aswangs. They didn't want to go there.
Seriously. Okay, we've got time for one more.
Got time for one more? Oh dear. Well, then we're gonna hit on one that we're not gonna hit on the very scary one. We'll have to do maybe a follow-up part 2
I would
of
agree.
Filipinos.
Hey, it's Halloween season. We can
We can do it.
Maybe we could do it one more time this next month, make it a little fun.
Mhm.
This other one, so on Negros Occidental, they have, and I thought it was Oriental, but maybe I'm a little confused. It's half and half. They have a beautiful place called Mount Canlaon, which is a volcano. If I remember correctly, it's been dormant for a moment, but I know that there was projections that could explode. But at the base of this mountain in caves, they have, and I'm going to be really careful pronouncing this because if I pronounce it wrong, it's going to sound weird to anyone that's Filipino. It's a Amomongo.
Amomongo.
Let me say that again. Amomongo. which for us would probably be the closest thing to Bigfoot that you could come across in the Philippines.
Ooh, Bigfoot.
It is so amo is a monkey, is kind of what it is. And so for this, it's what they think is it's a ape. It's a hairy man-sized ape with long claws. And so in Hiligaynon, again, amo is kind of, a monkey. And I'm so sorry for the Filipinos that are listening to this. I am probably not pronouncing that right. I never got good at that particular word. There were so many times I accidentally mispronounced things.
I bet that was fun.
You would be walking by someone, and if you pass by someone, usually you go agi kami, which means passing through. But if you go agi, it means you're homosexual. So there were probably many times I accidentally came by like, we're homosexual. Don't mind us.
Coming out of the closet all over the Philippines.
Oh my goodness.
So the amo mongo. See, I'm gonna just say
amo mongo.
Amo mongo. The this monkey man. Described as I guess there's stories about him, right? They said that there's a local folk tale called the Amo Mongo and Putput, the ape and the firefly. You ever heard of that?
So I didn't really hear too much about the firefly, but
so the Amo Mongo, this is another one that there was a lot of history behind it. This isn't something that's just only folklore. We've got written history of people actually talking about it. You got a lot of Spanish people coming over. And then there was even the most recent kind of big story in the Philippines of the Amo Mongo happened in 2008.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the story. Holy cow.
Where some kind of white-haired monkey man came down and just destroyed someone's farm, took out their goats, took out their chickens, and people were all around. And then one of the guys, I think his name was Aguilar, actually ran up and tried to stop it, got scratches on his face. What the heck did he run into?
Yeah, because is there any animals in that area of the world that could remotely cause that much damage? Because I wouldn't think with islands, typically you don't get large predators because they don't have any something like that. So there probably isn't anything big that could cause that much damage over there, right?
it was me.
It was
Jake is the Amo Mongo.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot. I mean, there was, you have snakes, but I don't think they had any poisonous ones that I was aware of.
But giant monkeys, they have.
Yeah, they don't have giant monkeys. They have small monkeys in the northern parts of that island, but I didn't ever come across anything large. I mean, you have. I bet the biggest animal that I think I'm aware of is the water buffalo. I almost called it by its Filipino name. But the water buffalo is probably the biggest thing, and it wasn't abnormal to get gored by water buffalo.
Sure, that was a common kind of occurrence.
oh my goodness.
But that's about it. So this one I didn't hear specifically about too much. It just kind of was in passing. Canlaon is absolutely exquisitely beautiful. It's probably one of the most beautiful places that I got to visit while I was over there. But it definitely it's a lot of really open fields except for some of the other parts that have the forestry and stuff. So I could see why there's some hanging out in there.
Oh man,
I don't want to go in there type of thing.
Sure.
And just the last comment here from me on this is I find it interesting that they say that it is not intelligent.
Yeah, they consider it an animal.
Yeah, it's a wild animal. So and they have medical evidence from that 2008 attack that it was some sort of beast. And so that's what I find so interesting. A lot of the things we've been talking about have been intelligent, sentient beings, but this one is it kind of fits in with, actual things that could exist.
Sure. And I think that's something that's kind of fascinating with this, because in the cultural area, I was doing a little bit of reading on this. In the area, the residents are just no, it's just an animal. There is an animal up there. We call it the Amo Mongo. But they don't think that it's a human. They don't think it's some kind of wild, crazy human. They just say, no, it's just a giant monkey. But it's a giant monkey. We're talking a big old white-haired, long fingernailed monkey. So,
yeah, it depends. Some people think it's only 5'4".
It's still pretty darn big for a monkey.
Yeah, you look at gorillas.
Well, the Filipinos are all about that size too, so they're probably
that makes sense. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But I mean, over here in the Bigfoot's 8 foot, 9 foot.
Yeah.
They do say it's funny. I guess there was the Bigfoot researchers from the History Channel I believe they did something where they went down and were trying to kind of figure out, is this the Bigfoot of the Philippines? And all the Filipinos were like, no, it's just a monkey. Like,
It's hanging out.
it's just there.
But, it's so interesting that even now, I mean, we're still discovering species that we've never
That's true.
found.
That is true.
And you look at the gorilla and the chimpanzees, we didn't discover those things or
Till
at least
way later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's a potential that something's still out there.
It could be. And I guess if it's going to be someplace, it's going to be someplace that's heavily jungled and forested that, you don't have a lot of people that are tromping through. And I don't know if that fits where this place is at, but
I don't. I'm trying to remember if there was a lot of traffic up there. Didn't seem to be a lot. So they had a lot of rice fields. I do remember that. And I think they had a lot of sugarcane fields too. But that island is known for sugarcane. So
Gotcha.
when you talk about like walking through sugarcane fields, just like cornfields in the signs and places, I had plenty of experiences walking through sugarcane fields. Scaring my companions half to death, things like that.
Yep. Oh my gosh.
So.
all right. Well, it's time for some final words.
Final words.
We'll start with Josh.
I'm going to have the lights on in my house for the next week. For my Native American friends, I'm going to have smudging session, clean out everything. I think it's so interesting that, these type of ideas exist. And for me, there's always a truth in everything. And so what is that truth? Is it an actual creature? Is it a fear that we've generated in our minds, or is it something to explain a fear that we may have, kind of thing. So yeah, that's my final thoughts. I'm freaked out.
Well, I'm gonna keep Jake with his final thoughts being the end, so I'll go next. I love this. I love the idea because this is something I had no idea about. When Jake first proposed this, I was like, oh yeah. We'd talked about and heard stories of kind of the things that he heard about in the Philippines, but I'd never taken the time to look into it. And now that I do, it's opened up this very rich culture, this very deep belief system, this kind of freaky, kind of paranormal kind of side that you just don't see a lot of times. And it's been fun. It's been fun to stay awake at night and go, did I just hear a tick tick? Something ticking outside. Like a motorcycle drives by and I was like, oh, it was pretty loud, so it's pretty far.
It's an aswang.
It's an aswang?
I loved the Philippines. It was a glorious place, and the food was fantastic, and the people were even more so. So it was, but they have superstitions, and for them, they were real. In a lot of cases, they had experiences, and it was always interesting coming across some people because you had some that had very strong experiences that were just like downright like, wow, that's insane. I can't believe you experienced that. Other times you had people talk about stuff and you're like, that's a little silly. I'm sorry. I can't believe that. I mean, but there was times. I mean, there were members that had bronze daggers. Made from like real bronze because that was what you could use to ward off an aswang. But
that's interesting.
But wow. I mean, now we just know you just take off your shirt, flip it inside out, and you should be good for the next little bit. So,
or be naked under the house with a sword.
You decide. Which one do you want, audience?
Yep. Well, Jake, how about you introduce just a goodbye in the language that you spoke over there and.
A goodbye.
Yeah, we could send it off with
the greatest
that.
Thing about it is I can say Maayon gabi, which is the exact same thing I said before, which just means good night.
Maayon gabi.
Another one would just be halong, which means take care.
Halong.
And with that, thank you for joining us at Twaddling Along. One last word from me. Be careful what tree you pee on. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Have a good night.